I grew up in a progressive Christian commune on the north side of Chicago. The members of our church put all of their paychecks together so that we had a lot of money for ministry. Each family got a set amount of money for food and clothing, and then they had to make a request for anything else that we wanted. I had 2 younger siblings. My father managed all of the houses and apartment buildings for our community, and my mother stayed home with us. Our family lived in the bottom of a large house. Part of this bottom section was shared with other people, so we lived around other people, but we had our privacy. We attended public school, but our home was different from the homes of the other children there. On the outside, I looked like any other kid at school. Inside, I felt really different. I loved my community. It wasn't weird to me that people walked through my front door, signed out our car, and grabbed the keys. I loved listening to people around the dinner table talk about ministries all over the world. All of the stuff happening around me all the time was just a normal part of our life. As a young child, I felt completely safe, loved, and secure. As I grew up, I started to wonder if our life was really as ideal as it seemed. After all, a big group of Christians was shielding our family from society's pain. What could be better than surrounding ourselves with other Christian families on a daily basis? Whenever I talked with my dad about how I was different from the other kids at school, I noticed a hint of defensiveness in his voice. It seemed like my parents had to look down on the outside society in order to protect their integrity. There was a sense that they were trying to avoid shame by claiming that their Christianity was the best way. After all, no other church had such a fun and wonderful lifestyle. That was true. Looking back, I see that my parents were stuck there. If we left this financial system that we were told was biblical, we'd miss out on the fun life with our closest friends and family. But as long as we stayed, we had to deal with the fact that we lived life differently from the rest of Christianity. How did we handle that? By privately looking down on other churches for missing God's plan for true community. Since pride isn't pretty, my parents tried their best to stay humble and get to know the other churches in our area. From this, I learned that pride must stay covered up if we want to develop a reputation for having God's heart. What I was really learning through the religious games was that it was up to me to protect my heart from feeling insecure about God. I was tricked by the lie that God's power is limited by how we live our beliefs. Thankfully, God Himself would soon rescue me from this lie with His fabulous truth. When I was in junior high, I was invited to a local Bible church for their kids club. Every Wednesday evening, we would go there and memorize Bible verses for little prizes. I began to see how the group leaders there loved and trusted every word in their Bible. I had been so focused on loving God's people with my whole life that I had never really fallen in love with His words. One evening when I was about 12, a group leader taught us that there was nothing we could ever do to earn God's approval and forgiveness. We were invited to find an adult after the teaching and pray to receive God's free gift of salvation from hell. I went to my leader and told her that I wanted to do that. I knew that Jesus suffered and died on the cross to take away all of our sins and bring us to heaven when we die. But I had a huge problem. I couldn't figure out whether I truly believed this enough to be saved from hell. I felt like I was sitting outside of salvation, trying my best to believe it. Looking back, I can see why. For my whole life, human beings had orchestrated my belief system. We decided for ourselves what the Bible meant. We figured out how to keep ourselves safe through our beliefs. We looked to each other for answers from the Bible when painful things happened. I didn't know how to trust God Himself to give me a belief. To make matters worse, I had already been caught between 2 opposite beliefs for years. I had spent my weekdays in the atheism of public school. During the evenings and weekends, though, I had been constantly nurtured with Christian principles. At school, I felt like no one really knew me. At home, everyone loved me. Despite these being opposite, both my church group and academia lived by beliefs that they had created. Even though I had been talking and listening to God from a young age, I didn't realize that my mind was being shaped daily by human-built beliefs. Neither belief system matched God's design for my life. The kind woman who spoke with me at my Bible club explained to me that I didn't have to make myself believe that Jesus died and rose again. She said that my doubts didn't matter because God wasn't asking me to create belief. All I had to do was ask God for the ability to believe. He was powerful enough to give it to me. I was so relieved that I didn't have to try to make myself believe in Jesus anymore. All I had to do was accept the gift of belief, along with the gift of forgiveness. We prayed together, and I told God that I wanted everything He had to give me, including belief and salvation. Suddenly, I understood that Jesus' death paid the price of my inability to believe. He understood my exact problem, and it was all taken care of. He still loved me and wanted me to be His forever. After that, my mind could stop worrying about whether or not I believed 100% in Jesus. I was no longer depending on my belief in order to get saved from hell. All I knew was that if God was real, He had my yes. God's thoughts became my new measure of reality instead of my own. I understood that my open attitude toward God mattered more to Him than the atheism that I was picking up at school. He would give me every little bit of belief that I needed. My fear of displeasing God grew smaller and smaller. I had been seeing God through the fear of my doubts, but now God had given me faith instead. Over time, this faith grew. All of this happened in my mind. It wasn't until I was invited to a conference a few years later that God's Spirit overwhelmed my heart with a feeling that He really loved me. I remember standing in an auditorium at a church with a few people gathered around me, praying for me. Because I barely knew anyone there, I was able to focus on listening to God without wondering what the other people were thinking. As this group of strangers prayed out loud for me to feel the Father's love, the words, "I love you," came clearly into my mind. I could tell that God knew exactly who I was, and that He felt deep love for me personally. I felt like my spirit had just been touched by God. I swayed in a moment of exhilaration, and someone reached out to steady me. I knew that other people were laying on the ground, soaking up God's love, so I just relaxed and let myself be lowered to the floor. I wasn't pushed down. I honestly was just enjoying the wave of peace and delight that soared over me. Nothing could stop me from going to God for His love after that. Every day I could feel secure, knowing that God had taken away all of my old standards of belief. Now He had also taken away the pressure to get things right in order to feel accepted by Him. His love had nothing to do with my obedience. It was the unconditional love of my perfect Father. I felt bad for all of my friends and family who were still trying to get things right in order to feel God's love. I had lived that way for so many years. I tried to explain to them what had happened to me. I just couldn't figure out how to help them understand. They were truly saved, but they were getting distracted by people's love instead of going to God to soak up His pure affection. As I thought about my church, I realized that it was hypocrisy that was causing my family to depend on a group of people for financial security. We were claiming to worship God without living the way that He had designed us to live. Although we were real Christians, our love for God was kept in a container. It was just one piece of this larger system of social acceptance. In order to break free from this acceptance machine, I had to admit that my God did not want me sacrificing financial control in order to feel belonging. By the time I was 20, I was ready for a new way of life. But where would I go to fit into the outside world? I'd spent my whole life looking down on normal society. The thought of living there made me depressed. Eventually, I settled into another church, and I left my community. I faced the reality that God's Holy Spirit hated being replaced by group control. Through some raw and painful moments in therapy, God finally pulled me out of my superiority complex. Ever since that first moment, When I realized that belief is a gift, not a standard to live up to, I've never again had that deep feeling of insecurity that I had as a child. I've had the presence of God right here inside me through all of the hard experiences in my life. I can always go to God for the feeling of being loved and accepted without having to do anything to earn that love and acceptance. That's what got me through the years of depression that I felt as I was leaving the communal lifestyle. When I hit rock bottom and I felt like everyone else's love was just religious manipulation, I could always depend on God's love to fill me up. The person of Jesus is what I always go back to. My conversation with him, I can always relax and depend on him. I can talk to him and listen to him speak to me through the Bible. If you'd like to do that too, I can send you a guide that I wrote about how to hear God's voice. For many years, I felt stuck in hypocritical Christianity without any way to figure out what God really wanted from me. The free guide can show you exactly how to have a relationship of love with God instead of a relationship driven by obligation. If you'd like, I can also show you how to say yes to the love that Jesus Christ has for you without any strings attached. Email me and tell me that you watched this video. Let me know that you'd like my help. You can find the links below this video. There's a whole new world of truth just waiting to make you free.